All right, good morning, everybody. It's Thursday morning, and it's great to see all of you. And we had a rare 2 week hiatus for various scheduling challenges and other activities, and it's great to be back together. I wish I could greet you again with a uplifting chapter from Ezekiel, but we're just not there yet. This is the second to last, the penultimate chapter in the heaviest stretch, and various of the little essays and entries that I've read about this chapter just describe it as one of the most graphic, most difficult, um, most depressing chapters in the Tanach. So, um, with that with that fair warning, and also, of course, just acknowledging the moment that we are in, um, with prayers for the safety of Israeli and American soldiers and people all around the Middle East in danger and in harm's way, and for our family near and far in Israel, and whatever efforts to reduce danger and bring about peace can happen in the speediest possible way is certainly what I'm myself am davening for. Um, and Some of you may know in the community we experienced a tragic loss just a couple of days ago, so we're extending our wishes of comfort to the family of Racheli Wiener, um, and finding some strength in being with each other and learning Torah together as we make our way to Yechezkel Chaf Gimel Ezekiel chapter 23. It's a very long chapter. Really stays on topic with one extended metaphor. You'll recall in Ezekiel chapter 16, we had a similar metaphor, which was of a baby that was born and abandoned, and then the baby is taken care of by God, who passes by and sees the baby wallowing in its blood, and protects it and swaddles it and raises it. And when the baby reaches an age of maturity, they partner, but the baby, the now woman, pursues other partners, is unfaithful, and we see adultery as the metaphor for idolatry. This chapter takes this notion to its absolute horrific extreme, and we'll see how that plays out. We'll remember also a few chapters ago, just kind of laying some of the context of the themes. A few chapters ago, we had two lion cubs representing two different kings of Judah. Here, we're going to see two women, and their names are Aholah and Aholiva. And we'll understand who they represent and what their story is as we read our way through the chapter. Again, it's a long chapter. The sexually graphic descriptions and metaphors persist and repeat. And then at the end of the chapter, we have a sort of the consequences of the actions are carried out. And we end, hard to call it a hopeful conclusion, but we end with the kind of the declaration that through all of this, you will know that I am the Lord God. So that's what lies ahead. And I'm going to pick on Lance to do some reading for us. Let me share my screen. Ezekiel chapter 23. Lance, will you start us off?
The word of the Lord came to me, O mortal. Once there were two women, daughters of one mother, sisters. They played the whore in Egypt. They played the whore while still young. There their breasts were squeezed, and there their virgin nipples were handled. The names were the older one, Aholah, tent, and her sister, Oholibah, my tent is in her. They became mine, and they bore sons and daughters. As for the names, Oholah is Samaria, and Oholibah is Jerusalem. Oholah whored while she was mine, and she lusted after her lovers, after the Assyrians, warriors, clothed in blue, governors and prefects, horsemen mounted on steeds, all of them handsome young fellows. She bestowed her favors upon them, upon all the pick of the Assyrians, and defiled herself with all their fetishes after which she lusted. She did not give up the whoring she had begun with the Egyptians, for they had lain with her in her youth, and they had handled her virgin nipples, and had poured out their lust upon her. Therefore I delivered her into the hands of her lovers, into the hands of the Assyrians after whom she lusted. They exposed her nakedness. They seized her sons and daughters, and she herself was put to the sword. And because of the punishment inflicted upon her, she became a byword among women. Her sister, Oholibah, saw this, yet her lusting was more depraved than her sister's, and her whoring more debased. She lusted after the Assyrians, governors and prefects, warriors gorgeously clad, horsemen mounted on steeds, all of them handsome young fellows. And I saw how she had defiled herself. Both of them followed the same course, but she carried her harlotries further, where she saw men sculptured upon the walls, figures of Chaldeans drawn in vermilion, girded with belts round their waists, and with flowing turbans on their heads, all of them looking like officers, a picture of Babylonians, whose native land was Chaldea. At the very sight of them, she lusted after them, and she sent messengers for them to Chaldea. So the Babylonians came to her for lovemaking and defiled her with their whoring, and she defiled herself with them until she turned from them in disgust. She flaunted her harlotries and exposed her nakedness, and I turned from her in disgust, as I had turned disgusted from her sister. But she whored still more, remembering how in her youth she had played the whore in the land of Egypt. She lusted for concubinage with them, whose members were like those of asses, and whose organs were like those of stallions. Thus you reverted to the wantonness of your youth, remembering your youthful breasts, when the men of Egypt handled your nipples. Assuredly, Oholibah, thus said the Lord God, I am going to rouse against you the lovers from whom you turned in disgust, and I will bring them upon you from all around. The Babylonians and all the Chaldeans, the people of Pekod, Shoa, and Koa, and all the Assyrians with them, all of them handsome young fellows, governors and prefects, officers and warriors, all of them riding on horseback. They shall attack you with fleets of wheeled chariots and a host of troops. They shall set themselves against you on all sides with bucklers, shields, and helmets. And I will entrust your punishment to them, and they shall inflict their punishments on you. I will direct my passion against you, and they shall deal with you in fury. They shall cut off your nose and ears. The last of you shall fall by the sword. They shall take away your sons and daughters, and your remnant shall be devoured by fire. They shall strip you of your clothing and take away your dazzling jewels. I will put an end to your wantonness and to your whoring in the land of Egypt, and you shall not long for them or remember Egypt anymore. For thus said the Lord God, I am going to deliver you into the hands of those you hate, into the hands of those from whom you turned in disgust. They shall treat you with hate, and they shall take away all you have toiled for, and leave you naked and bare. Your naked whoredom, wantonness, and harlotry will be exposed. These things shall be done to you for your harlotries with the nations, for defiling yourself with their fetishes. You walked in your sister's path, therefore I will put her cup into your hand. Thus said the Lord God, you shall drink of your sister's cup, so deep and wide. It shall cause derision and scorn, it holds so much. You shall be filled with drunkenness and woe, the cup of desolation and horror, the cup of your sister Samaria. You shall drink it and drain it, and gnaw its shards. And you shall tear your breasts, for I have spoken, declares the Lord God. Assuredly, thus said the Lord God, because you have forgotten me and cast me behind your back, you in turn must suffer for your wanton whoring.
Okay, let's pause here, and I'll just ask Elaine to do the remainder.
Then the Lord said to me, O mortal, arraign Aholah, is that right?
Yes.
Aholah and Oholibah, and charge them with their abominations. For they have committed adultery, and blood is on their hands. Truly, they have committed adultery with their fetishes, and have even offered to them as food the children they bore me. At the same time, they also did this to me. They defiled my sanctuary and profaned my Sabbaths. And the very day that they slaughtered their children to their fetishes, they entered my sanctuary to desecrate it. That is what they did in my house. Therefore, they sent for men to come from afar, men to whom a messenger was sent, and they came. For them, Oholibah, Oholiba, you bathed, painted your eyes, and donned your finery, and you sat on a grand couch with a set table in front of it, and it was my incense and my oil you laid upon it. And the noise of a carefree multitude was there, of numerous men brought drunk from the desert, and they put bracelets on their arms and splendid crowns upon their heads. Then I said, to destruction with adultery. Look, they are still going on with those same fornications of hers, and they would go to her as one goes to a prostitute. That is how they went to Ohala and Ohaliba, wanton women. But righteous men shall punish them with the punishments for adultery and for bloodshed, for they are adulteresses and have blood on their hands. For thus said the Lord God, summon an assembly against them and make them an object of horror and plunder. Let the assembly pelt them with stones and cut them down with their swords. Let them kill their sons and daughters and burn down their homes. I will put an end to wantonness in the land, and all the women shall take warning not to imitate your wantonness. They shall punish you for your wantonness, and you shall suffer the penalty for your sinful idolatry. And you shall know that I am the Lord God.
Thank you both. So it's a tremendously devastating, graphic chapter. Hard to even really digest. One of the comments on the 929 webpage that stood out to me was the comment by Robert Alter, who wrote a landmark, incredible translation of the Tanach, and he says the following. Just read to you his excerpt. As in chapter 16, as we mentioned, Ezekiel takes the conventional metaphor of whoring as an image of idolatry, and also of alliances with foreign powers, and pushes it to a level of sexual explicitness, as does no other biblical writer. Nowhere else in the Bible does one find this sort of direct reference to fondling breasts and sexual play, and nowhere else does one encounter an evocation of a concupiscent woman allured by the largeness of the male sexual organ, which we saw in verse 20. There are passages in this prophecy where the allegorical referent of idolatry virtually disappears as the sexual foreground is flaunted, meaning at some point we're so far removed from saying this is about idolatry that it actually just feels like it's about this sexual perversion and adultery. Ezekiel looks distinctly like a man morbidly obsessed with the female body and with female sexuality, exhibiting a horrified fascination with both. The word in the second verse set of this line, this is from back in verse 3, dad, is represented by some as nipple, but on dubious grounds. It is a phonetic cousin of shad, the standard word for breast. It occurs only here and in Proverbs 5:19, where it does not seem to mean nipple either. In any case, fondling, the more general sense of the verb is knead, K-N-E-A-D, does not work well for nipples, although it is appropriate for breasts. So this is just Robert Alter giving you a sense, someone who's translated the entire Tanakh and thought deeply about its use of, literary themes and metaphor and allegory, of how singular is the way in which this chapter stands out for its extent of almost sexual and female bodily obsession. Again, it's something Ezekiel has done elsewhere, but nowhere to this degree. So that's a theme of the chapter which absolutely stands out. I want to just point out a number of things specific literary details, and then open it up for some comments. Again, it's a very long chapter. So first thing we're told here is our usual opening, the word of the Lord, Ben Adam, right, mortal or son of man. That's our standard way in which God addresses Ezekiel. There were two, and here we don't have the intro of, say a parable or this is a metaphor. It just goes straight into the description. There were two women, and it's interesting. I heard Lance sort of say, as you read daughters of one mother, you said, of course, sisters, and they are sisters. But interestingly, here they're described as daughters of one mother, right? I think the reason could be a variety of reasons. One, in the allegory, is to sort of emphasize that they less about their direct relationship with one another and more about their common ancestor, right? And some of the commentaries suggest, these, as we'll see, these are Judea and Samaria. They not just they came from the same place, but they emerged from a united kingdom, right? They came from the commonwealth of David and Solomon when there was unity, and somehow in that moment there was, a more positive frame for the Israelite community. So, right, they at the time when there was just the mother, things were better, and somehow this split to the two daughters leads to a lot of challenge. And we jump right in. The verb of vatiznena, they played the whore, and then the noun that we see over and over, taznuteha, their favors or her whoring, is shot throughout the chapter. So we jump straight into this playing the whore. It starts out with Egypt. Again, we have this very graphic imagery, as Alter points out. And now we get their names. Oholah, translated as tent or her tent, and Oholiva, my tent is in her. So we can immediately jump to the commentary of the Radak, who gives the most sort of straightforward interpretation here. Let's see if we have it available in translation. No, so I'll just briefly read it to you. He says the following. Hold on. Okay. Aholah is Shomron. Samaria is called Aholah. Yerushalayim is called Aholiva. And Shomron, which was Samaria, which was the head of the kingdom of Israel from the time that Omri, the king, kind of built it up, and Yerushalayim, the seat of the kingship of Judah. And the explanation of Aholah, meaning why is Samaria called Aholah, as we see here, right? Aholah is Samaria. Why is that? Perush Aholah, ki ha'ohel shelah ein li chelek bo. It's called her tent because God says, I have no portion, I have no place in her tent, right? Samaria is called her tent because God doesn't have a connection to this. She sort of makes her own tent. What does that mean? Hem ha'agalim sha'asa Yerovam. This is a reference to the bulls, the golden bulls that Yerovam made, right? After the unified kingdom splits with the children of Solomon, Yerovam goes to the northern kingdom and Rehovam to Judah. And Yerovam sort of creates this divide between the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom, and he builds his own temple, not sanctioned by God, so the people don't have to go. At first it sounds like maybe it's a good motivation, so the people don't have to travel so far. Then it seems like it's much more sinister, of really, creating a separation and, abandoning God. But the idea is Yerovam builds an unsanctioned temple in the northern kingdom. We know from the past few weeks' Torah portions that Ohel Moed is a term for the sanctuary, the tent of meeting, the place where God's name dwells. So Aholah, her tent, means a tent that she made for herself without consulting me, in which I have no place, says God. And that's Samaria, that's Shomron, because that's the community that built their own temple as what ultimately was an act of defiance and separation and kind of defection from from Judah and Jerusalem, where the temple, of God is housed. Just carrying on, one more comment of the Radak, who says, "Va'aholiva Yerushalayim," Aholiva is Jerusalem. Rotzel Omar ki aholiba. That actually means my tent is in her, exactly, my tent is in her. B'sham ani shochein. That is where I dwell. Kiba, because in her, in Judah and Jerusalem, Beit HaMikdash is the temple, Shehu Mishkan Kavodi, and that is the seat of my glory dwelling. So we find out that these names are apt. Shomron, Samaria, is her tent. She made her own tent and left me out of it, says God. And Yerushalayim, Aholiva, my tent is in her. And in a way, which is worse when they both go off to harlotry? Is it worse that the place where God put God's name did it, or the place that abandoned God did it? We don't even get such an opining, but we will see how the two sisters speak to each other in a later text that evokes Ezekiel that we'll see in just a little while. So, we start with Aholah. That's the older sister, Samaria. Some people say older because she was more populous, the northern kingdom, maybe older because she kind of fades from the scene first, right? We have the exile of the northern kingdom in the year 722, so she's kind of the older sister. She moves out of the house or disappears earlier, so we first get her story. She was whoring. Remember, it all starts with Egypt. Then she lusts after the Assyrians. We have the description of them. They are these handsome men. She bestows her favor upon them. She doesn't stop. We have this, ongoing discussion. And so God delivers her into the hands of her lovers, the Assyrians, and she herself is put to the sword. We have the indication of the actual destruction of Aholah, of Samaria, of the northern kingdom, and becomes a place of, mockery or scorn or derision to see the fate of the northern kingdom, to see the fate of the daughter Aholah. And then we do actually have reference to sister. Her sister Aholiva saw this, right, which seems to actually be, not just the harlotry and the lusting and the whoring after, but actually the downfall, the death. She herself was put to the sword. Aholah is killed. The northern kingdom is gone. Aholiva, Judah, Jerusalem, sees this. We would think they would learn a lesson, and this is a trope we've seen in Isaiah and other places, that Judah and Jerusalem saw what happened to the northern kingdom, but they didn't change their ways. In fact, they got even worse. She whored more and more debased than even her sister. She went after the Assyrians again, and God saw how she defiled herself. Derech echad lishtehen. There was one path for the two of them. They did the same, wrong actions. But Aholiva, Judah and Jerusalem, Vatosef al Taznuteha, she carried it further. She even just the mere sight of these like cave paintings, these pictures or sculptures on the walls, and indeed there are kind of from this era images like this. She sees the pictures of these Babylonians and says, I want them. And she sends messengers, right? You could imagine if someone came, again, just following the allegory, if someone's in an unhappy marriage and someone came and propositioned them, that's one thing. But the idea that you are in an unhappy relationship, you see a picture of somebody far away and you send away for them, takes much more, effort to pursue that infidelity. So she sends the messengers, the Babylonians come, they have their lovemaking, and then Vateka nafsha mehem. She turns from them in disgust. We have instances of this in the Tanach where after lovemaking there is then like a revulsion which follows. And this is an important key word in this chapter, Vateka. It's an unusual word. We have other words for disgust, Gimel Ayin Lamed, and others. And this is a very rare word. In fact, if you jump with me for a moment, if I can find it. Hold on. I know the print is small on the screen, but this is the root, Vateka nafsha mehem. This root appears only 8 times in the Tanakh, and has an interesting an interesting kind of nuance to it, which is one of the first places where the first place where this term comes up is when Jacob wrestles with the angel or with the man that he meets in the night. And what does it say? When the man sees that he can't best Jacob, he touches the socket of his thigh. Vateka kaf yerach Yaakov beheav koimo. And the socket, people call it, they talk about the sciatic nerve, but the really it's like the socket of the thigh of Jacob, vateka. This is usually translated as was dislocated. It was dislocated in his wrestling with him. So that's one term. Just we're going to play around in this semantic field of this root to try to understand why it's been chosen in this radical chapter in Ezekiel. Then later on, after we have the story of Pinchas, I believe it is, the Midianite women and the Israelite men, another instance of adultery and idolatry intermingling. And what does Moshe say? Take the leaders of the nation, vehoka otam ladonai, impale them in front of God, in broad daylight. We have this term that appears a couple of times for impaling. And then we come to it here, and it means, disgust, so to speak. So we want to understand what's going on here. We'll go back to our chapter. Okay, so Vateka, she turned from them in disgust. And then God reacts in kind, as we're still on Judah and Jerusalem, on Aholiva. She flaunts her harlotry. Vateka nafshi me'aleha. I turned from her in disgust. Kasher nak'a nafshi me'alachota. So it's not just disgust, it's the revulsion of disgust that leads one to separate themselves from the other, right? But that separation, if we go all the way back, Rav Avi often says the first place that a root word or a noun appears in the Torah is the key to understanding it. So the first place it appears in the Tanach is Yaakov's dislocated thigh, right? So Vateka, it's not just turning away in disgust. It's a separation of things that are supposed to fit neatly into one another, right? The hip ball fits into the socket. When it's dislocated, that's an unnatural dislocation, right? So God turning away in disgust, as God turned in disgust from the sister, is not just a typical act of revulsion. It's a revulsion of things that are supposed to fit together. So it's a very unusual verb, and I think it's here for that reason. And it's striking, by the way, that if we go on a little bit further, we're going to go on and then come back. The verb shows up again here. And then we see, I'm going to rouse against you, God says, all the lovers from whom you turned in disgust, same verb. And I'm going to bring them upon you from all around, the Babylonians and the Chaldeans, the people of Shoah and Koah. Koah is the same root here or the same, essential letters as this language of revulsion and disgust. So it's this sort of wrenching apart. People that belong together or that had once coupled are now being wrenched apart, and now they're being brought in an unnatural dislocation for the purpose of punishment. Okay, so bear with me just a few more comments before we open it up. Okay, so carrying on. Again, this is Aholah, Samaria is gone from the scene. Now we're focused on Judah and Jerusalem. Again, who just carries on, having witnessed the downfall of their sister and having been punished by former lovers. They just keep on going, lusting for more. Again, this is the verse which is like the interest, the fascination with the large genitalia of the men, drawing the interest of the woman, reverting to the wantonness of your youth. Kind of was full circle, and now God turns, right, as we read, I'm going to rouse against you those lovers. They're going to attack you, set themselves against you, right? All the things that drew them to you, their manliness, their beautiful military or, leadership regalia is going to be used against you, right? You defiled yourself with them and then were revolted by them, and they're going to come back now and punish you, inflict their punishments upon you. And the language actually is triple language of judgment here. V'natati lifnehem mishpat u'shefatuch b'mishpatehem. Right? I'm going to put their it translates here over and over as punishment, but it's also a sense of justice. You will justly, receive your sentence from them. I will direct my passion. This is God speaking. My jealous zeal against you. And again, all this very physical stuff. They're going to cut off your nose and ears. You're going to fall by the sword. They're going to take away your sons and daughters, and your remnant will be devoured by fire. They're going to strip away your clothing, take away your dazzling jewels. There's a little play here, mishpat, which we had 2 verses ago, and now we have v'hif shituch. They're going to strip away from mishpat to lifshot or lahafshit. This was the same verb for what happened to Joseph before he's thrown in the pit. His brothers strip him of his garments, right? So this is a degradation that's part of the series of punishments. Strip you of your clothing, take away your dazzling jewels, and you're going to come to an end. You're not even going to remember the Egypt of your youth. Carrying on again, God says, I'm going to deliver you into the hands of those whom you hate, etc. And now we get the language. This is very significant because it links us back. If I can find it, hold on a moment. This cements the connection back to Ezekiel chapter 16, which had the infant wallowing in its blood that God rescued. Right after all of this, all the harlotry and all the adultery and all the idolatry and all the fornication, you will be revolted by them. They will come back and punish you. They will take out their judgments upon you. They will strip you, and you will be left va'azavuch erom ve'eria, naked and bare, and all of your harlotry will be exposed. That pairing, erom ve'eria, I didn't check how often it appears in the Tanach, but in Ezekiel chapter 16, when God comes and sees the wallowing infant and takes care of it and allows it to grow, it grows to the point in which it says in that chapter, your breasts are firm and your hair is sprouted. Va'at erom ve'eria, and you were still naked and bare. Right, so the exact same phrase, this kind of pairing of adjectives, erom ve'eria, naked and bare, which was the moment in which God had been caring for this child, allowed it to grow, and now came to cement God's union with that child. It's that same allegory which continues in this chapter. That woman then goes and lusts after all these people, then is repulsed by them, then they punish her, and she's left just the way she began, erom ve'eria, naked and bare. These are going to be done to you for your harlotries with the nations, defiling yourself with your fetishes. B'derech achotech halacht, right? You walked in the way of your sister, and therefore I'm going to punish you the same way. I'm going to put her cup into your hand. It's a deep and wide cup of punishment, filled with drunkenness and woe. Rabbi Yaakov Bieler on the 929 website describes this as like an addict personality, right? Because you were so obsessed with these sexual pleasures or idolatry in the allegory, right? Now the punishment is you're going to drink this cup of woe, and you're like not even going to be able to let go of it. It's this certain personality of obsession, right? It's the cup of your sister. You're going to drink it. You're going to drain it. Matzit means to squeeze out every drop. And you're going to suffer as a result. And now just the last bit of the chapter. Now that's all one long section. And now we know we have a section break, not just because of this little letter samech here, paragraph break indication, but also we get a new comment from God with a new address. Vayomer Adonai Elai ben Adam, the Lord said to me, O mortal. Right now, it's not just the enemies that are going to arraign and judge them. You have to judge them. Ezekiel, hatishpot et aholav et aholiva. You have to arraign them and charge them with their abominations. Right? Could almost imagine it that God is sort of saying all this is gonna happen, but before it gets there, before it gets too late, bring them to task, bring them to trial, see if you can, punish and rehabilitate them. Or maybe it's afterwards. They're gone, but there's a remnant, and you're going to do this to the remnant, right? And now we get the litany of wrongdoings, which are not only idolatry, They've committed adultery. They truly have, but they've also given their children to, idolatrous cult and the classic sins that are central to Leviticus that Yechezkel brings up again and again in a pair. They profane my sanctuary. That's my sacred place, and they profane my Sabbaths, sacred time. They entered my sanctuary to desecrate it. That's what they did in my house. They even sent people from afar to come. They tried to make themselves beautiful. They had these, orgiastic parties in my temple. That's how they went. Righteous men will punish them. Summon an assembly against them. Ha'aleh alehem kahal. And let them be an object of horror and plunder. And now we have a sort of a sense of, if they were arraigned to court, now we have a sense of punishment, which is like, we actually get in here 3 of the 4 capital punishments. The 4 capital punishments that the rabbinic literature talks about are skila, sreifa, hereg, and chenek. Stoning, burning, decapitation by sword, and strangulation. And in this verse, we get pelting with stones, cutting down with the sword, burning down, not themselves, but their homes. Maybe it imagines burning them in their homes. So the central biblical capital punishments are invoked here. I'm going to put an end to wantonness in the land, and you shall know that I am the Lord God. So just horrific, overwhelming, devastating chapter. I want to make one last point before opening it up, which is that the story, a chapter like this, must have an afterlife, right? It's so graphic, it's so vivid, it's so singular in the Tanach that a later medieval poet picks it up. I don't have a sense totally of the midrashic traditions on it, but Solomon ibn Gabirol, one of the great medieval poets, composes an elegy, a kina called Shomron Kol Titain. Samaria, give your voice. And we have it. I'm sorry I don't have a handy translation. I'm just going to point a few lines to you. So Samaria gives her voice. La'eretz acheret yitzauni banai. My children have left me for another land. Va'aholiva. And now, so remember, Samaria was Ahala. Now Aholiva, the one who is Judah and Jerusalem, the other sister, Tizak, she cries out, Nisrafu Armonai. Remember, we just read the line of the houses being burned, right? My castles, my palaces have been burned. Vatomer Tzion, that's Aholiva, that's Judah and Jerusalem. Zion says, Azavani Adonai. Lo lach Aholiva, chashov onyech ka'onyi. Now Ahala, Samaria, answers, no way, Aholiva. No way you can think that onyech, your affliction, is like my affliction. Could you even compare your break to my break? I am Ahala. I've been treasonously treated in the terrible things that I've gone through. Meshiva Aholiva, ani ken kashti. Right? I've been treated just the same, answers Aholiva. It's a conversation between the sisters in which they go back and forth and say, my suffering is worse. My suffering is worse. And then it ends in this last paragraph with the paitan, with the poet, turning towards God. The one hachomel al dal chamol al dalutam. The God, the one who shows compassion and mercy to the needy. Show compassion to their impoverished and wretched state. See their desolation, v'orech galutam, and the length of their exile. Don't get angry anymore. Don't remember their wrongdoing and their folly forever. Rifanat shivram, heal their brokenness. V'nachem avelutam, and console their mourning. Kiatas sivram v'ataya olutam, you are their hope. Chadesh Yameinu Kimei Kadmonai, renew our days like the days of those who came before. Kinaomech, as you yourself said, God, and through the words of the psalmist, Bonei Yerushalayim Adonai, God is the one who builds up Jerusalem. Okay, I realized as I was saying this whole thing, I wasn't actually sharing it on my screen, sorry. But you can see it here, Shomron Kol Titain, Lo Lach Aholiva, they're speaking back and forth. Aholiva then answers, and then we come to the end, this last paragraph in which the liturgist turns to God. So this is a kinah from Tisha B'Av. It's one of the elegies that we say on the 9th of Av, and we understand very well why it's chosen. It's the two families of Israel and Judah who've been abandoned, who've been exiled. They're speaking to each other. They're comparing their fates after a much longer period of time has passed. Right, they're lengthy exiles as they look at their situation and ask God to show compassion and mercy and to reverse or restore the fates of both of them. So this is one of the afterlife's lives of this chapter. And thanks for bearing with a lot of explanation, long chapter, lots to point out, and happy to hear questions, comments, and reactions. We'll start with Lance. Go ahead.
Okay, number one, according to AI mode, Hosea, Jeremiah, and Isaiah also use comparable sexual metaphors.
Yes, but none anywhere near as graphic, lengthy, and extreme as this one, I believe.
Okay, I'm not going to deny that. Number two, it seems to me that what's going on here is comparable to October 7th.
There's certainly in the devastation, in the
what's being done to women.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it's hard not to think about that. Yeah.
Number three, I think the most important thing here is Samaria versus Jerusalem, or Samaria versus Judah. And I think that here, if you look carefully, you will see that Samaria doesn't come out as well as Judah. Maybe Judah is like worse in a sense, but at least I think if I remember correctly, you said that God got upset with Samaria because they had a tent and God wasn't part of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now go forward to the Common Era, when you have the rabbis and the Samaritans, and the rabbis treat the Samaritans as third-class citizens, even though the Samaritans wanted to help the rabbis build their temple. The problem here is that today, Samaritans are not considered Jews. Samaritans are considered some kind of, well, there are only 800 of them, but they're considered some kind of minor non-Jewish community or communities. And I think that this is a serious problem. In fact, this whole chapter is a serious problem. I'm getting some help there from the noise. Anyway, I think that what you're getting here is, from a feminist point of view, patriarchal misogyny. And this is, from a feminist point of view, outrageous.
Yeah, I appreciate everything you said. I think I know your fondness for the Samaritans and your sense of identity with them, and it's a striking dimension to this chapter. Absolutely, and yes, it has been. Rav Alex Israel, whose short podcasts are accessible on the 929 page, and who has one on each chapter, and he comments here on the difficulty of this chapter to modern feminist ears, and I think that's present amongst all the other dimensions. Ellen, go ahead and unmute. We don't hear you yet. A little tricky.
Okay.
Let me send you a little message to unmute, see if this helps. Good.
Okay. I don't remember the exact line, but towards the end, when it says righteous men will punish them.
Yes.
Normally, it's God. Who are these righteous? I mean, who's left?
Yeah.
He's really saying that everybody is whoring and everybody deserves destruction. And yet there are some righteous men around who we don't know of.
Yes. It's a great question. I had not, I noticed it, but didn't take more of a look. And I'm just going to share the screen for a moment and show at least what one commentary their their answer is less good than your question, which is the Metzudat David we see here says Va'anashim tzadikim, righteous men, here from verse 45, Hem sarei melech Bavel, they are the officers of the king of Babylonia. You say, really? Shehema nechshavim letzadikim lemulan, because relative to the behavior of the people of Judah and Jerusalem, they are considered, relatively speaking, to be righteous people, right? So it supports your point that there doesn't seem to be anyone righteous left around. So we're calling the people who are going to carry out the punishment, the people of Babylonia, the righteous ones. Right here we see it here too. This is Radak, who says, "My master, my father of blessed memory, wrote, Eino omer tzadikim mamash." This doesn't mean truly righteous people. Rather, people who are coming with claims against them will come. And here's Rashi, judges, right? The princes of the king of Babylon and the king of Assyria. And Targum Yonatan says righteous as compared to them, right? The other nations. So it definitely supports your point that there doesn't seem to be anyone truly righteous around. So it's just the relatively righteous who are going to be able to carry out the punishment. Yeah, great question. Other questions or comments? Graham, we're going to hear from you today. Not to put you on the spot.
See if I can do this. Oh my gosh. All right. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you.
Okay, let's see if we can do it. Wow. What happened here? All right. Idolatry destroys the soul, adultery the will, endless blind passions with a lust that will kill. You seek satisfaction in the world of the senses. Your eyes become blinded by red bloody lenses. You followed your lust, but followed not me. Unfaithful whore, you forever will be. Accountable now, you will be to me. For now you have brought me a world full of pain, your innocence gone and your lives full of shame. Chasing shadows that dance on the wall, Samaria, Jerusalem, soon they will fall. For my retribution will I soon unwind. Forever in chains I then will you bind. Promises broken, and with them my heart. Your lust has torn my garden apart. I long for your love, and not for your lust, and then we can build a world we can trust. There is a new world exceeding your grasp, tied in the knot with faith as a clasp. For where is the gain in all of this pain? The flesh is so weak, the spirit so strong. I'll find you a place where you can belong. If you take a stand, if you take my hand, the fire of my judgment will salvage the land. The truth you will know, compassion will show, for you have been unfaithful to me, so now you will accountable be. Feeling the weight and hearing the call, I vow that I will break down every wall.
Wow. Worthy of Ezekiel's own poetry this week, Graham. Thank you. Paste it into the chat if you would, so we can send it around.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah. So heavy stuff. And next week is the final chapter in this stretch of the prophecies against Judah and Jerusalem and the northern kingdom. And we shift to what we've seen in a number of other prophets, which is a series of chapters on prophecies for the nations. So we'll, after next week, we will turn to that. I'm just going to shift to my calendar for a moment to see that hopefully next week will be on schedule as normal. And that looks good as far as I can tell for March 12th. So wishing Estella refuah shalema, and that she feels well, and good to be with everybody. Stay dry and careful on this rainy day. Be in touch if you need anything. And love to mom and dad, and good day to all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.